My answer to that is you don't look disabled. And I say, well, you don't look stupid, but appearances can be deceptive.
Welcome to Talking Shop, the Communities Inc. podcast. Episode 11. How autistic are you? Hi everybody, welcome to Talking Shop. I'm here with Autistic Nottingham. Would you guys like to say a few words of introduction?
Hi, I'm Steph. I manage the social team at Autistic Nottingham, so I organise our social events and make sure that everybody has a great time.
My job is slightly more boring than that, but I'm the training and development lead. My role really is to try and put the word out there about building awareness of autism through training. So we try to deliver training to mainstream companies. We're also looking at developing employment. In fact, we have an employment mentoring scheme at the moment, which I run.
Could you tell us a little bit more about Autistic Nottingham, the work that you do?
So Autistic Nottingham was founded by autistic adults for the benefit of autistic adults. So we help adults like me who live with autism without a co-occurring intellectual disability. We provide social care support, social events and the training team just to try and kind of benefit the whole autistic community. So it's a really great organisation to do an awful lot of work with, not actually a great deal.
Yeah, and I'm finding myself in Shamsha's chair this week as a beneficiary of the work of Autistic Nottingham. So it's really great to have you guys in. So let's start off and jump straight into the big questions. What is autism and what is it not?
I think Phil's probably best suited to talk to you about this. He runs a course that tells us all of the things.
It's so what is autism? Autism is a huge intellectual knot, because to try and unpick it and try and to crystallise what it is, it takes an awful lot of doing. There's 100 years worth of research, more than 100 years worth of research and investigation into exactly what it is and how it occurs. So let's just try and keep it as relatively easy and say what we tend to struggle with is mainstream means of communication and the way mainstream individuals kind of conduct their lives. We see things very literally. It's very black and white. So we struggle with, in terms of communication, we struggle with the nuances of communication. So if you're asking me something and it's got a subtext and I'm expected to guess what you're really saying, I won't guess what you're really saying. I'll struggle with that. So those that's the communication difficulties. We like clear, plain language. I need you to tell me very specifically what you want me to do, because if you do, then there's no ambiguity. I haven't got to second guess what you might be asking me to do.
Or say.
These
conversational set pieces are a real mystery.
I do recognise that I do use some idiom in my language because I'm very well read, and I just do it because I've learnt. I went 50 odd years of my life not knowing I was autistic, so I've kind of developed a number of strategies that I didn't realise I was doing that, but that's what I've done. One of the other factors in defining autism is that we will struggle with back and forth conversations, again because the language that's used, sometimes there is cues built into language and we won't necessarily pick up on the cue, i.e. I've now paused, it's your turn to speak. We might miss that. We don't necessarily read faces very well, so we don't get facial cues and gestures and expressions, so we might not pick up on that you're actually angry or sad or happy. So that becomes problematic. And what I will say is that once I can hold a conversation, but after a few minutes I start to get very tired, and if the subject's boring I will lose interest very quickly. If it doesn't stimulate me, I can't pretend that I'm interested in what you've got to say. I'm sorry, I do try my best, but essentially there is this difficulty between the to and fro in a conversation, and if there's a lot of people around the table, forget it. I just withdraw completely after a few minutes. I just can't cope with it anymore. It just becomes really very tiring. And then that's pretty much two elements. And then the third element is what we call repetitive behaviours. And it's, to my mind, my definition of that is that I kind of like timetables and routines, and my day, although I am very flexible, I feel, compared to some people who are autistic individuals, I do like a structure, but I can be a little bit more flexible about it. But I do like to know that A will be followed by a B, and then B will be followed by a C. I like that notion of certainty. So my routines are very quite repetitive, but I think repetitive behaviour can also refer to things like stimming.
Yes.
So you can tell me better. I don't stim. I don't stim.
Stimming is it's a self-soothing repetitive behaviour. So a little girl might sit and twiddle her hair, and that could be considered stimming. It isn't always, but could be. Or if somebody's sat kind of bouncing their leg, that's often a stimming behaviour as well. Or the more kind of media typically portrayed stimming is like rocking back and forth. So it's anything realistically that a person may find soothing. A lot of autistic people suffer with skin picking disorders, because that repetitive picking and peeling around your fingers is both soothing because it's the repetition, but also damaging to your skin. So I'm a skin picker, but I combat that by getting my nails done so I can't pick. So yeah, it's so multifaceted, and that's why I think things like fidget toys are a great thing, because it gives you something to do with your hands to help you concentrate. I sit and stim an awful lot by talking with my hands, playing with the air, almost kind of waving around like a madman. I've got these two in front of me who are, kind of watching me gesticulate wildly. So
while trying not to tap because of the microphones.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's such a multifaceted, and it is a spectrum, but it's not linear. There's no kind of really a little bit autistic and very, very autistic. It's kind of a radial spectrum of kind of spiky graphs, which is kind of fascinating to look at, really.
I've heard it described as a colour wheel as well.
Yeah. That scans quite nicely.
Yeah, I've heard somebody say it's not a spectrum, because spectrum suggests there's a starting point and then kind of like a fan, where invariably there must be a starting point and must be an end point. And I find that's struggling, because that suggests a hierarchy of some sort. I am on the spectrum, but I'm at that end of the spectrum, which would be classed as high functioning. But I still have all the problems that the person at the other end. But there's a kind of a hierarchy, so I don't like that. So, and somebody said, actually, it's a circle, and I like that, because I can circle into absolute meltdown and dysfunction, but at the same time, I am also completely free and in flow sometimes. So I like that notion of the circle. Like it's not perfect, but it kind of feels good.
Yeah, and it goes some way, I think, to redressing some of the misconception about what autism is, and teaches us a little bit about what it's not.
That's the next thing as well, isn't it? Well, I think when we look at the history, and I'm not going to go into the history because it's just too much. There's a residual. If you think, if I can use a metaphor, it's like the autism ship is sailing on from when it was first formulated back in 1910 to the current day. It's leaving a wake. Like, you can remember, a ship leaves a wake. In that wake, that churn, there are things like it's catchable, it's curable, it's a mental health problem.
I think people also like to think that it's also just little boys who are non-verbal and spin around in circles as a stimming behaviour, when actually that's not the case. There are so many autistic women and girls and non-binary and other kind of gender identities as well. So if I tell someone I'm autistic, they go, oh, well, you're nothing like my 5-year-old niece. No, because I'm a 30-year-old woman. Of course I'm nothing like your 5-year-old niece.
I say, you don't look autistic.
That's
That's a classic, isn't it? Oh, I
Yeah.
love that one. Oh, but you don't look autistic. I don't always say that I am autistic. It's not because I'm ashamed. I just think it's not necessarily appropriate for me to suddenly say, "Oh, by the way, I'm autistic." Sometimes it's appropriate to say so when somebody seems to be thinking struggling, recognise I'm struggling with something. I say, "Well, I'm sorry, I'm autistic," and sometimes I don't always pick up on what you say. And some people are actually quite nice once you lay that in front of them. But one of the things it's not, I was going to come to again, is that what was that one? We don't have a sense of humour, which is great because you run a comedy club, don't you? So I always say that one makes me laugh with some of the funniest individuals around, and there's lots of comedians, professional comedians who are autistic. What's the other one? Some of the others? We are antisocial. I mean, no, we don't necessarily get on with people because people can make us feel anxious and scared sometimes.
I think that depends a lot on how you define social.
Yeah, well, I was just thinking in terms of the general social chit chat around the table. And when I say antisocial, we tend to try and we put ourselves to one side, out of the way of all the people.
And small talk is tedious.
Sorry. Well,
and small talk is tedious,
Yes.
so it makes us seem more antisocial than we are.
Well, it's pointless. It's pointless, isn't it?
Is it rude to say I'm not antisocial? You're just boring.
Yeah, this is go back to about being honest, isn't it? If our PR specialist is very forthright, isn't she?
Yeah, we do love Ella for that.
Yeah, she does call a spade and very distinctly so.
Yeah.
But so these are the things that what autism is, and it's this is what I said at the beginning. I suppose it's a bit of a knot one time, and I tried to get away. I started to try and get away with this presentation of using too much of the clinical language.
Yeah. Well, on the subject of this clinical language, is autism a disability?
No, not. I don't feel disabled.
I sometimes feel disabled, but there is a lot more context and nuance required than just a simple yes or no answer. I think I often feel socially disabled, but not in a physical way. I do have other physical conditions going on. However, my autism isn't the cause of the physical problems I face. The only time I see a physical issue is if any of my sensory needs become overwhelmed. For example, if I'm in a pub with some friends, if it gets too loud in there, then I may struggle. But I wouldn't necessarily see that, at least in my life, as a disabling thing. There are things that I can do to help myself, and I think it's not in a traditional sense of needing a blue badge, a disabled thing. I think when you get into the severe support needs that stem from autism and all of the co-occurring conditions and the comorbidities with autism, you start to get into what I'd probably describe as a grey area of disability. But I don't think alone a person who is only autistic is completely disabled. But society has a great way of making us feel very disabled because of the way that cities are getting louder and more overwhelming, and especially as we're kind of settling back to our new normal post-coronavirus and all of the restrictions there, that it's like we've forgotten how loud and busy and overwhelming and just everything all at once the world can be. I live out in the countryside, so I get a lot of peace actually when I go home at night because it's quiet and I can relax. Mm-hmm. But when I used to live in the city, I couldn't switch off because every 5 minutes there'd be a car driving outside of my house, and there'd be a siren every 20 minutes because I lived in Forest Fields. There's a lot of sirens around there, so it was, a bit of a tangent, but...
No, I think the nuances of what is right. I mean, I did say that I don't consider myself disabled, but certain elements of life are disabling. And I noticed once I learned that I was autistic and I got my diagnosis, then I realised that there was a number of doors that were shut on me. I'd been knocking on these doors trying to achieve things, and I just found I was struggling to do that. I couldn't work out why, and then I realised that the autism was a thing that we look at the part of that barrier. So yes, it has disabled me, but I don't consider myself to be disabled. So that's also, I think there's a kind of subtlety about that conversation. It's not just a straightforward yes or no.
I think that's really helpful, and that's something that I think that a lot of us have experienced as well. It's disabling when people have a certain set of expectations that are unclear, that are not even related to the thing that you're trying to do.
Yeah.
You know, so making eye contact during job interviews, or a certain amount of it. You know, who knows what is the right amount of eye contact, and so those subtle expectations that are excluding us make us disabled, and also the sort of the medicalisation of the whole process as well. So you know, we talk about an autism diagnosis.
Yeah. Yeah, the medical model and the language, and I was trying very hard. I was giving a presentation yesterday to say not to use things like disorder or condition, but the official definition of autism is autism spectrum disorder or condition. It's almost, I find it really difficult to stop myself saying that, because it's kind of been hammered into you, and this medical model, social model of disability. I've worked in disability for 30 years or more. It's really, you would think I'd be used to it by now, but it's so ingrained that you can't sometimes help yourself but use that kind of language. And of course it's perpetuated because it's continuously being used. It's not a diagnosis, it's an assessment. Does that make a difference, do you think, calling it an assessment? I've been assessed.
Yeah, I think I've noticed around the community that is generally the language that's used anyway.
Oh, okay.
I'm waiting for my assessment.
Cool.
But I think, if we manage to get some of the medical professionals to move away from diagnosis, because it's like you've suddenly been stamped on the middle of your forehead that, you know, that you're different.
Officially dysfunctional.
And it feels really rigid and formal, and I don't think I don't think it needs to be. I think there needs to be some kind of regulation around it, of course, but I think actually it needs to be more forgiving, I think is the word I'm looking for, in a way that it's not just you get a stamp on a piece of paper and the book's closed and that's an end of it. And I think that's the way it feels at the moment, that people kind of get their paperwork and are expecting a kind of miracle out of the paperwork, and that's not really what happens.
Okay, well, let's talk about what does happen then. So you're going through life, you think, hold on a minute, I'm really struggling to gauge expectations, things like that. Okay, I think maybe I'm experiencing life differently to other people. Should I get a diagnosis? What happens next?
The official process is then you speak to your doctor. They should tell you to make sure you cover the AQ50 and the AQ10, which is a shortened version of the AQ50, and then take that back. They score it, and if they see it's appropriate, they will refer you on to a diagnostician. But there are a lot of people where that's not really happening. It took me 3 doctor's appointments to get a referral in the first place, because I was 26 and it was just as the lockdowns were beginning with the COVID times. And so I went in, said, I think I'm autistic. I've just been fired from work because I can't keep doing everything that they're expecting of me. Help. And my GP said to me, and I remember the words clear as day, "Why does it matter now? You've coped so far." So
familiar.
Yeah. And then the next 2 appointments I brought it up, kind of as an addendum to what else I'd been in for, and eventually a GP went, "Oh yeah, no, you should be checked for this," and that was kind of thankfully the end of it. Yeah, and I think that's actually quite a common experience, and that's really sad for people who look on the surface to be kind of a quote unquote, using air quotes here, normal member of society, when actually there's a hell of a lot more to it than that. And then you'll have to go through and unpick an awful lot of stuff about your home life, your school upbringing. You've got to dig out old school reports. They've got to talk to your parents, which isn't easy if you don't have the greatest relationship with them. And a lot of these things feel really overwhelming. It feels like you're stood at the bottom of Mount Everest, when you don't have, like, you can take it in steps and kind of it will all pan out eventually. But it just feels like such a long drawn out process that the actual process itself is a barrier to people.
Yeah. In terms of drawn out, my own experience from referral to assessment was just over 3 years.
See, I'm coming up to the 10th anniversary of mine. Right, so mine's a slightly different story. I suspected that there was something wrong. Nothing was right. Okay, there was friction that was I was not smoothly passing through life. It was rubbing up against something. I don't know what it was. But I'd started working with somebody with Asperger's syndrome. This was 1998. And I was learning about what Asperger's was, and he was telling me what Asperger's meant to him. I was getting him into a job. I was supporting him into work. One of the earliest cases, and I thought, yeah, that sounds just like me. And then I said to a very respected colleague, I said, I think I might have Asperger's syndrome, because blah blah blah. And she goes, Phil, you're such a funny guy. You can't be autistic. So that was one of the myths of autism straight away. You're just too much of a sense of humour to be autistic. You can't be. So I kind of thought, oh right, she's probably right then. Perhaps it's not, it's something else. And then 10 years later, I was working with another guy, and he was brilliant at talking about his autism. And he gave presentations, and that was one of the things we were working on, trying to make this into a little business. And I thought, I've had enough of this. I'm going to go and do the AQ10, I'm going to do the AQ50, and I scored highly on those. And then when I went to see my GP, I had a complete breakdown. There was snot and tears everywhere. I had to confess I'd tried to kill myself several times. And she said, right, okay, you need to see a psychiatric diagnosis. And I was going, but I don't need to, I'm not mad. He said, but no, that's how it's done. And it's 7 months, roughly. But the support I got took 18 months to come through. I'd almost forgotten. We had to apply for funding to get some counselling and some input into what it means to be. Right. So that was my journey. It was like 7 months it took me to get the diagnosis or the assessment, and then it took a further 18 months to get any kind of professional input from the team up the road here at Highbury, what used to be called the Asperger's team or the City team.
Yeah, and they're a lovely team, but with almost no funding, just like the rest of us.
Yes,
they were able to give me 3 sessions of talking through the diagnosis.
I got 6, I think.
And,
that's inflation for you.
And then I found out that if I actually wanted some more sort of long-term, meaningful support, I'd have to go to Sheffield.
Oh, right. Yeah. This is. I think we're getting to that notion into this post-diagnosis, post-assessment. The what is there out there for? That's maybe where Autistic Nottingham comes in a way, because we are. Going back to that functionality type thing, we're working with people who are like ourselves. Well, we hold down jobs. We've got we're in relationships. I'm married, but we struggle with some of the peripheral stuff, all that stuff that I struggle with, and that's what we provide services. We do PA work, don't we? And I do a little bit of PAing as well. Just looking after people who perfectly. One of mine is she's like hyper intelligent but she struggles with some of the day-to-day stuff, and that's what I help her with.
Yeah.
And I'm quite happy to do that as well.
Yeah, we hire a lot of autistic people for our PA service, and it's I think I've seen it referred to online as the mum friend override, where you can't go and ask for more ketchup, but your friend wants some. Oh, I can go and ask you. That's fine. And that's where I can go and tidy my friend's house, but I can't tidy my own. And so it's kind of that.
I get that. Yeah, that's a really weird one. I can advocate strongly. If you ask me, I'm really struggling with this phone call, Phil. Can you do this for me? I go, yeah, of course I can.
Yeah.
If I got to make that phone call for myself, it's like no,
cold sweat. Absolutely.
No, I hate the phone.
Yeah. Unknown numbers phoning me. I just throw my phone across the room.
No, we don't answer phones in our house until they declare themselves on the loudspeaker answer phone. It's ours. You can pick it up. All the family know that we won't answer the phone.
Yeah.
If you have autistic friends in your life and you're listening, if you want to text them to let them know that you'd like to call, they will be grateful.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Text announcements is great. I prefer text. It's easier. It gives me a chance to think about it. I think that's the thing. It's that delay. It's for me with my manifest with me. Language processing is a bit of a problem. I have to think through. I can't come up with witty replies and on off the cuff until 10 hours later. I think, I could have said that, couldn't I?
Yeah.
So the notion of a text and an email gives me a breathing space, and I suspect it's pretty the same for you too as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think on the phone call thing, I think a lot of autistic people I think it is considered a separate thing. So please correct me if I'm wrong. But pathological demand avoidance / PDA is a thing that a lot of autistic people will struggle with, and a phone call for me, I think, triggers that PDA where I'm kind of, crumbs, suddenly somebody needs something from me, and then I panic because
you're put on the spot.
Because I'm put on the spot, because I'm kind of suddenly they're demanding something from me by notion of phoning me. So I kind of and panic.
Yeah,
and
because you don't know what they're demanding.
Yeah, and it's that fear of the unknown and the interruption of my day.
It's like open-ended requests for a conversation. That honestly, the pit of my stomach goes out, and it could be something completely benign.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's very real as well. It's like when my wife speaks to, say, her daughter, and I get on well with my stepdaughter. We have quite a bit of a banter, but she said, "Do you want to speak to her?" I said, "I'm going." Because I just at that moment in time, I don't want to engage in the conversation, so I find it really difficult. Yeah, and that's what happens with me. If this notion of being put on the spot, that's the fear. I can do this, but I need to do it in my time, in my way.
Yeah.
And the breathing space is the good thing. This is the regional adjustment. We might even segue into that in a minute.
Well, let's because we've been discussing a sort of a broad range of experiences and needs that obviously any autistic person can have several of, and that can have quite an impact on how we engage with work. A lot of autistic people struggle to find and keep jobs. Where do you suppose that comes from?
Wow, I mean
apart from just neurotypical demands and a really diminished view in society of what is normal.
I did write for a while before we sort of built up to the idea of doing an employment mentoring scheme. I did do something called the accidental achiever. I'm a long way from what I used to be. I used to be a builder, and now I feel like I've come a long way, but I don't feel that I ever had a plan. I just kind of stumbled, and I've done okay, and I don't know quite how I've done okay. This is what the accidental achiever is. So I've gone from leaving school not very well qualified or academically to having a degree and a postgraduate degree, and I hold down a job that pays reasonably well, and I've got there without a plan. That's the problem for me with employment, where the problem is a lack of a plan. So my approach when I work with someone with autism is to say, look, let's talk about who you are. And I use this across the board. This is not just if I was working with anybody who was people who are non-autistic or whatever. We will talk about who are you and what do you want to achieve. What are your skills? What are your experiences? What are your interests? What are your preferences? What turns you on? What will get you out of bed in the morning? It's a really strong profile that I like to build with people. And then we start to say, right, then how can we apply what you are and what really makes you happy and function? Where do we take that? So the kind of job market tends to go with, you are expected to finish school and then go and get a job. Nobody tells you what that's all about. My nightmare was when I got to 16 in 1977, before we even had the triad of impairments. They weren't even formulated. The diagnostic framework we use today was not even formulated when I left school. I like to throw that one in. I was 18 when that happened. I had not got a clue what work was. I know my dad did it. My mum did. I'd done some. I got a mate who'd left school before me, and he was doing something. I mean, he was earning money, and he could buy his own cigarettes, and we ended up pouncing them off people. but I had no concept of what work is. And I don't know whether that's, okay, that might be a very general thing for all young people or adolescents. But for me, from looking back on an autistic perspective, I felt that that's probably one of the major problems was I didn't know, and nobody talked to me about what work was and what I might like to do. It was very kind of, school gates open, you pour out, the factory gates open, you pour in, and you go and work down the pit, or you work in the factory, and then that's it. Nobody talked about what this was all about. So I feel very keenly that I want to talk to you about who you are and what you want to do. That is a starting point. I'm not saying that ameliorates any problems in the workplace, but I think if you've got a distinct sense of where you are and what you want to be, it's a really good foundation for trying to then negotiate the potential difficulties of your autism.
Yeah, I think in terms of education, having gone back to university as an adult, there is much more emphasis on what work is and how to engage with it once you're there. What there still isn't, or what it feels to me like there is less of, is clear routes.
Right, okay.
So I can sit down and I can pontificate about all of the things that I'm interested in, and and explain all of the things that motivate me, and I can then go and apply that and say, okay, well, here are a bunch of jobs that incorporate all of those things or some of those things. Now, how do I get from here to there? And it used to be like that, there was either an apprenticeship scheme, or you would apply and you would get a response. And now it took me maybe 200 or 300 applications to get the job that I'm in now. And of those, I got responses to maybe 10.
Yeah, I get that. And
I didn't even know where I was going wrong.
So the notion of schemes set up by the government, they will do what's expedient to keep them in government, is one thing. We all know that. So they try, but really the problem is very real, that we do need to have pathways into employment. The government will start to initiate those sort of things, but then the funding runs out after a year or so, or couple of years, and so it's always very short-termism. They don't actually do anything. They just say, right, we've got so many £1 billion, and we're going to, you can apply for this funding, and anybody can pretty much apply for it to try and implement their plans. What doesn't happen, and has never happened as far as I'm concerned, is the government doesn't go to CBI or the TUC, all the kind of the trade union bodies and the Confederation of British Industries, and say, we need to work together to make this. We've got a problem here. We've got a number of people who can't get jobs. Some of these people have got very profound disabilities or difficulties, and we have a population of autistic individuals who really struggle. We don't get this dovetailing of what the government wants and what the industry wants. There's always this chasm, this kind of gap between what the government dictates that we should be doing and what the industry wants. And industry will say, why should I bother taking somebody on if their disability or their difficulties means I've got to change my working practice? But if we came together and said, right, government says we're going to invest in you, industry, but this is part of the deal. We will help provide the support and the networks that are required for you to take on a bunch of disabled people. That's never happened. I keep saying we keep throwing millions and billions of pounds into this idea of supporting people into work, but nobody talks to industry about what they want and how they should, hopefully, will take a responsibility and work in partnership with these schemes. I'm always the cold caller as an employment specialist. I'm the person on the phone, or rather, Steph can do it for me.
You also get this impression as well that when the government talks about employment, any work will do. It doesn't matter whether it's fulfilling.
Well, that's the key. And people say, Phil, you're really being idealistic. And I'm saying, stop that. I'm not. That's not idealistic. That's happiness. That's how you create a happy workforce. You go for a job, but any job.
Do a job that doesn't make you want to kill yourself. That's not idealism.
No.
Those are sort of necessities for life.
No. I think the notion of just doing any job is nonsense. I can't work with that personally, and I don't think it works for the individual in the end. Ultimately, any job.
I don't think it works for neurotypical people either.
No, it doesn't. I'm saying across the board. If you don't have a distinct idea of the dimension I take to people is this: what would get you out of bed in the morning? You have a job you love, but some days you think, oh, for goodness sake, I can't be bothered. But generally speaking, what drives you, gets you out of bed in the morning to go to work? What makes you feel happiest doing that?
You touched on businesses needing to adjust their working practice to accommodate autistic or disabled people. We talk about that usually in the framework of reasonable adjustments, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
Can we talk about what kinds of adjustments are helpful for autistic people, with obviously the caveat that this varies greatly from person to person?
Yeah.
I think a good baseline is, as far as when you're coming to address your own reasonable adjustments, is look at the things that you generally need. So if you need a quiet environment, consider things like noise cancelling headphones or working somewhere else. So big open plan office buildings don't work for everybody, but they always worked for me because the hubbub behind me gave my brain something to concentrate on whilst I was kind of typing away and doing whatever I needed to do. So for me, that works as a great reasonable adjustment, actually working in a big building. I don't work at home very well because I get really distracted by all of my stuff. Whereas other autistic people will go, actually, I need to work from home because I need my stuff. And then you can look at things like more regular breaks. So rather than just a big 1 hour lunch break in the middle of the day, try doing a half an hour break at lunchtime and then doing 2 15-minute breaks either side to kind of break up your day, to give you kind of some structure and routine. The other thing you could maybe ask for or consider is to start and leave a little bit later, where, I really struggle in the morning. So one of my reasonable adjustments is that I get in at 10 rather than 9, so that it's actually just a little bit less pressure in the morning, so I don't arrive feeling horrendously flustered and overwhelmed going, I'm really late. I'm not late at all. I'm arriving on time. This is fine. But sometimes your brain doesn't listen when you say that to yourself. So adjusted working patterns. Work on the weekend so you get a day free in the week, so that you get a better work-life balance. Because I think that is an employment thing that is super important, is a work-life balance. So I work part-time because I know that if I didn't, I wouldn't have that work-life balance. My home stuff would become too overwhelming and my work stuff would vaguely excel, but I would then go home in an exhausted heap and not do anything. I wouldn't eat properly. I wouldn't, do the things I needed to do to function as a human. I think with me specifically, I've asked for a sit-stand desk so that I can keep moving and keep mobile and almost change my scenery without actively moving from my desk, because that is something I need. So with the caveat that everybody's needs are slightly different, the possibilities really are endless on what you can and can't ask for, and just assessing your needs of I thought about what I need to have a comfortable environment. So my sit-stand desk, I've got a good noise reducing headset. It's not completely cancelling, it's just got really big thick ear cups, so that I can actually block out enough noise to concentrate. And so having kind of almost a toolkit at my arsenal to kind of combat the variety of things that go on when I come to go to work. And so I think that's probably wise for a lot of autistic people to consider when it comes to trying to get those big organisations to change the way they work. And the other thing that I would just, as from a personal perspective, would love to see across everywhere is just more default accessibility. Like, if you're producing a video or some training material, put subtitles on it and not make it hidden 3 menus deep in the corner of a page that you don't think to look at to find them. Just put them on, leave them in the bottom of the page. If they make a difference to you, you can see them. If they don't, you can ignore them. And things like having screen filters to reduce blue light, I think is quite a useful tool in general to have, because people probably shouldn't be as exposed to as much blue light as they are, because, you know, screens can be damaging for the brain. Not brain, but, you know, our eyes, they get really tired and stuff. So, yeah, I think just a base level of accessibility for all employers would be great.
Yeah, and some of the simple things that that I've asked for as reasonable adjustments, you know, they could just be normal practice. You know, things that I need to work well are things like clear expectations.
Yeah. I think one of my arguments with, particularly in the relation to autism, is that actually some of the changes that you can make to make it more amenable to an autistic individual actually have benefits for the rest of the working team and population. Some of the changes in terms of, like our office, for instance, it's shared space, our headquarters. When you walk into the room, all the lights used to come on in all the other rooms, but we actually had those overhead lights, which were similar to these in this room, but were quite harsh, disabled. And we've got standard lamps, which make it nice and soft. I mean, that is welcoming to anybody. It looks cosy, it feels lovely and warm and welcoming. That, I would argue, would probably sit well with the vast majority of the members of staff, for instance. So when we talk about making reasonable adjustments specifically for an autistic individual, actually the benefits can have immense for the rest of the team as well. So it's not, it takes away some of the element of selfishness, I suppose, sometimes, or peculiarities. Like, well, this person wants the lights turning down. Well, actually, it actually just feels nice to have the lights turned down. It's better. So that's a thing that I think I would argue for. That, like you say, you know, there is sometimes the kickback or payoff to making an adjustment. It benefits everybody else as well, and that's the line I sometimes take with the notion of we're going to make some changes.
With regards to employment, obviously we're talking about people with autism in employment. Unfortunately, that accounts for a significant minority of us.
Mm.
So what support exists for everybody else?
We are trying to lead the charge. I've seen what it could be like, and my background says I know what models will work or what processes will work to make it be successful, and that's what I'm hoping that we can leave a mark, and we could kind of develop a legacy that we actually are pushing this idea that individualised support is the way forward, because that's what we needs. What it does exist, as far as I'm aware, is that there's a lot of stuff online, like on some helplines and advice and guidance, which sit you at a desk and say this is what you should be doing, and then send you off to do it. My approach is we sit at the desk, talk about it, and then I go off and do it with you. That's a distinction. That's a difference. That's a difference that makes a difference. And it's a good quality advice. It's great. Well, we all sat around this table. We know we can walk out the room and forget what we've just been told. That's the nature of who we are. But if you've got somebody who said, I understand that, I'm working with you and I understand what we need to do, and this is what we said we were going to do, and I'm going to help you do that, that makes the difference. That's the big difference, you know.
We're nearly ready to wrap this one up, I think. Do you guys still experience discrimination?
I think so, yes. I know as a fairly normal presenting woman, I get infantilized a lot when I talk about autism and being autistic. So I've had it where people have changed tone mid-sentence when it's become relevant that I mention the autism. They've gone from talking to me like I'm a normal person to suddenly they're using the really soft voice, and it's really soft, and they don't then use big words anymore, and it's infuriating. I'm not a child. I'm a 30-year-old woman. I understand what you're telling me. I understand the concept. I understand the words you're using. Carry on as normal, please. This is infuriating. And I also get it from sometimes if I'm perceived to be single, it's a phrase that's thrown around a little bit on the internet of manic pixie dream girl, of being the kind of slightly airy-fairy, not quite paying attention, but I fully understand what's going on thing where people maybe see me as easy to manipulate and can try and take advantage of that, or they'll try and kind of coerce me specifically into doing things I maybe don't want to do, or existing in ways that don't really work for me. And it is discrimination, but so many people don't see it as discrimination. So then when you call it out, they go, oh, and then the excuses come, and you have to try and then be as blunt as our social media person and call a spade, which is always amusing. But that's because I always find it amusing because I've worked in complaints where I get to tell people to go away in really professional language. But yeah, no, there's a bunch of discrimination because there's like the perception that we're not actually that intelligent when there's a large swathe of us that really are.
Yeah. Although, to be clear to anybody listening, that that we have the normal range of intellect of everybody else. So we're not all sitting in a corner rocking, and we're not all Rain Man.
Yes.
Yeah,
So that's
Yeah, but I think there is a lot of discrimination, and it's all, to use a phrase I think has been used for a lot of racial discrimination. It's not the same thing, and I don't mean to try and co-opt it in any other way, but microaggressions and like one of my sensory things is sound. So I really struggle in like mainstream ladies' toilets in like a shopping centre because the hand dryers are really loud and there's always 3 women apparently having a conversation outside of my specific cubicle for some reason. And so I get horrendously overwhelmed in the ladies' toilets, and I feel like the cubicle's closing in on me, and I just want to scream and get out of there. So I use the disabled toilets a fair bit, mostly because of my own sensory needs, and I have physical needs too. But the amount of old ladies I get staring and glaring at me walking out of the disabled toilet, even though I'm carrying a walking stick.
Yeah, instead of crawling or rolling out in a wheelchair. Yeah.
This is you don't look.
Yeah. You don't look autistic. You don't look disabled.
Yeah. My answer to that is you don't look disabled. I say, well, you don't look stupid, but appearances can be deceptive. Because it's just like, oh, I'm so angry. I get so angry when we use that term. But you don't look disabled.
Yeah, but no, there's an awful lot of things that I would consider to be like microaggressions and
we actually teach a course on microaggressions, helping people to understand that, especially in the workplace, and how to nip some of those early indications of disruptive ideas in the bud, so that you can create a more inclusive environment. On that notion, what makes a good ally to an autistic person?
Someone who's either willing to call out those microaggressions as they see them, someone who's willing to help with any additional needs you may have. I have a friend who we will just call each other when we need to do housework and stuff, and I'll just carry my phone around with them on speaker. We don't always even have to like be talking and having a conversation. We'll just be kind of virtually in each other's presence doing whatever we need to do, or like I will ask my partner to come and sit in the kitchen with me whilst I'm cooking dinner. He doesn't have to do anything, just sit there, because that is a coping mechanism called body doubling, and I use that quite a lot with the other people in my life, and thankfully they're all quite happy to be social with me, but it's that kind of feeling of they're helping without having to do anything that is too taxing for them, I think is important, because they don't want to feel like you're being a burden to them. And I think it's okay to ask for things that would be a burden for them, but I think you need to understand that they could say no. But if you just ask them to in a very direct way, can you help me with this? They will generally. And I think knowing what community is out there that will help too is really vital. Like we've got a pretty great online community. We've got a Discord server that has got, I think, hundreds of people in there maybe at this point, where we can just throw a question into a box that, has anybody experienced this? How do I go about this? So that's, I think, really vital as well.
Yeah.
Knowing where your community is.
Yeah, I think I agree entirely with what you're saying. I think I've got a strong sense of what service is. For me, what good customer service is, or what service is, and I like to think I give good service along the lines of I am subservient to you. I'm your PA and I'm subservient to you. I'm not there to tell you what you got to do, make any judgments about what you got to do. I will talk to you about it if that's what you would like me to do, and we'll discuss it.
Yeah.
I ain't going to make any judgments. You do what you need to do, and I will be there to help you.
Absolutely.
That's my definition. I'm very similar to that. I just want to have the last word.
So for anyone that's listening that is either diagnosed or suspects that they have autism, how should they reach out?
So we're on social media: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or X, formerly known as Twitter, and LinkedIn if anybody uses that particularly. And on our website we also have a contact us form. We do have a phone line, but we know that autistic people can struggle with phone calls, so no pressure. Our office space isn't really a drop-in, but if you do need to come see us, we can arrange for you to visit. So yeah, there's many ways you can get in touch. I mean, if you sent us a letter, we'd reply.
Okay. So reach out however you reach out to anybody, and you will get a response.
Yeah.
And if you do call us and we are unavailable, we do have a voicemail service. If you leave us a voicemail, we will call you back.
Great. Thank you guys for coming and talking to us about your work and all of the wonderful things and the struggles and that come along with that.
This has been a fantastic opportunity to have a chat.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Great. No, it's been really great talking to you both. Thanks again for coming in.
Okay.
No worries.